Christopher shivered as he walked along the sidewalk. He took a quick second to look up at the sky to see if it was still snowing. The small snowflake that landed in his eye gave him his answer. Christopher stopped for a moment to rub his eye and get the tingle sensation out of it. He sighed, then continued to trudge forward to his house. There was still a good 7 or 8 blocks he had to walk before making it back home. Christopher noticed a fence-off field up ahead on his right. He walked over towards it and realized that he might have just found a shortcut. On the opposite side of the field, he spotted the Christensen's place, which was only a few streets down from his. That proved that the field was a more direct route to get home. He stood there trying to decide if he should continue walking his normal way to get back or take the shortcut through the fenced-off land. A small gust of freezing wind that blew by made his mind up for him. There was no way he was going to spend an extra 10 or 15 minutes walking home in this weather. Christopher carefully placed his gloved hands on the top of the barbed wire fence. Taking the utmost care, he hoisted himself up and over. He landed with a thud into the snow, which gave out under his feet. Christopher waved his arms widely as he tried to keep his balance. After a few seconds, he was able to regain his footing and relaxed. He looked down to see that the snow came up just below his knees, so it was well over a foot high. Christopher took a deep breath and started to push forward across the field. He had to lift his feet up as high as he could when he walked, so he met less resistance than simply dragging his legs through the snow. The practice of high-stepping turned out to be exhausting as he found himself stopping after a few minutes to catch his breath. Christopher checked the sky again to find snowflakes still falling. He looked back to see how far he had made it and groaned upon learning he had only crossed a quarter of the field. Knowing he had to keep going, Christopher reluctantly started walking again. The only sounds to be heard were his heavy breathing and the snow moving around him as he walked. As he went to take another step, he could have sworn he heard something behind him. Christopher turned and scanned the part of the field he had already crossed over. The only thing visible besides the white snow were the tracks he had made getting to where he was. He shrugged his shoulders and started moving when the noise of the snow moving sounded again from behind him. Christopher whipped his head around and called out, "Hello?" Silence greeted him, but he still felt like something had been behind him. "Is there anyone out there?" he shouted. Christopher's breath rose up in front of his face while he waited to see if something was going to move. After standing still for what seemed like an eternity, he finally turned back around. An uneasy feeling trickled down the back of Christopher, and he suddenly wanted to get out of the field as quickly as possible. He started his high-stepping method again and pushed forward. The world was completely silent around him until he reached the middle of the field. A strange screeching noise froze Christopher dead in his tracks. Fear overtook him, and he was far too scared to find out what the noise was. With every fiber of his being, Christopher hoped that he had just heard a weird-sounding crow. As he started to take another step, the screeching noise sounded again. This time it seemed like there was malintent in the sound, and Christopher was not sticking around to find out if that was true. Christopher took off as fast as he could go, his feet awkwardly hitting the top layer of the snow as he desperately tried to run through it. He looked over his shoulder constantly to see if anything was coming after him. The adrenaline pushed him forward, but he could tell that he would be tired in a matter of minutes. Another screech filled the air, and Christopher had to check behind his back again, which is when he saw it. Something he didn't know what was moving through the snow. It seemed to be tunneling just beneath the surface. He was able to see it pushing up the snow as it moved along. Christopher gasped for air as he pushed himself forward. His legs burned from the having to put forth extra effort because of the snow weighing him down. The cold air hurt his lungs when he tried to take deep breaths, and he found his energy quickly leaving him. He checked behind him to see the snow trail was closing in fast. The thing moving under the snow was now less than 40 feet behind. Christopher looked ahead and saw the barbed wired fence roughly 100 feet in front of him. Upon seeing his salvation so close, Christopher found a new well of energy. The burning sensation in his legs lessened, and he scrambled forward through the snow. He took in little breaths of air as he pushed his way across the field. Another screech let him know that the thing was growing closer. Christopher looked behind his shoulder to see the snow pushing up a mere 20 feet behind him. He turned around to see he was within spitting distance of the fence. Christopher put everything he had into a few more strides to reach the small embankment that the fence was on top of. A sense of relief rushed over Christopher as he scrambled up the small hill and started to climb up the barbed wire. A sudden tugging on his leg almost caused him to fall backwards into the snow. He looked down at his feet to see 3 slimy tentacles wrapped around his right leg. Christopher grunted and struggled with all of his might to lift himself up the fence. The tentacles proved to be too strong for him, and he soon found his grip failing him. Christopher screamed out for help as his fingers slipped off the fence. He desperately clawed at the snow for something solid to grab onto as he was pulled backwards. Christopher let out one final scream before he was pulled beneath the snow. There was a quick rustle of movement at the spot of the snow that Christopher had been dragged under, but that soon ceased. A quietness settled over the field as the snow continued to fall, slowly covering the tracks that Christopher had made. Kia ora kahoa. Grim here. Thank you very much for listening to this very interesting tale. It is titled Under the Snow, and it has been written by the amazingly talented DeBoard. This was a submission provided to me from said author, and I couldn't have been more happier to have received it and given it a read. He has provided 2 other short tales that he's provided me, and I think that I will give them a go and read them next week. One appears to be a short poem, and the other, well, you'll just have to find out. As I said to my last video, I have recently started a Buy Me a Coffee account. Please don't feel you have to. It's just any sort of donation that you feel you can is helpful for the channel. But even outside of that, just giving this channel a quick like and subscribe is more than enough. maybe watching a few videos for me so I can get my watch hours up. But I won't be one of those guys who drags this out, and I hope you have yourself an amazing day or night wherever you are, and that you are safe and sound at home with your friends, family, and loved ones, or happily alone. And as always, this is Grim, and I'm signing off.